we're gonna make stewed white cabbage. I actually like this one a lot better. This is called a cone cabbage. It's the same as a white cabbage, it's just grown a little bit different. I'm gonna cut it in half first. It could be a little tricky. I'm only gonna use half. So that's very simple, just cut it in the size you like. And here in my pot I have boiling water. I have a little bit of vegetable broth in there, and then I have some salt, a healthy amount in here, because we're going to use this as the base for the stew. Yep. And in they go. I like for it to be like blanched very shortly, so it's still a little bit crisp. So now that the bouillon here is boiling with my cabbage inside, I'm gonna drain it out. I'm gonna drain it into another pot because, as I said earlier, we are gonna use it to make the stew into cold water with the cabbage, so it doesn't keep cooking. I don't use ice a lot in here, just out of laziness, I guess. For the actual stew, I use butter, just a little bit of butter, like a tablespoonful. So now that my butter is melted, I'm going to add a little bit of flour. It's important that you give the flour some time to roast off, so it won't taste too much like bread. So now that it's in here, we're going to just give it a little bit of time to roast. I'm going to turn this up a little. And then a trick my mother taught me was to take the flour and butter out so you can add it to the boiling liquid. Then you also not going to end up with too thick of a sauce. So I'm pouring in the amount of bouillon that I need. I also like to add a little bit of milk. It just gives a little bit of flavor. So now that my liquid here, broth, bouillon and milk is boiling, I'm gonna add the thickener, which is contained of butter and flour. And I just like to keep it at a pretty high heat and then drag the milk or drag the stew back and forth. So you keep it in a constant boil, which makes it easier to get the right consistency. It will still have a little bit of that bread flavor. I'm gonna add pepper now, so the pepper has time to get into the sauce. Make sure to save your broth for later. So now that we have the cabbage chilled and the actual stew ready, I'm gonna make sure to drain the cabbage really well, so we don't get too much liquid back into the stew, because that's just gonna thin it out and make it not taste as well as we used. I'm gonna put it into a bigger pot. Again, like I said earlier, I really enjoy big pots and bowls, so I don't make so much of a mess. Taking the whisk out, using my favorite instrument, the rubber spatula. I'm gonna add as much of the stew that I feel necessary to use to make it like just bind. Because we want it to be kind of like not a sauce, but more like a warm salad of sorts. So see it as you're dressing a salad, a little heavier than normal, because the stew does taste very, very well. I love using just a little bit of lemon peel in here to give it just a little bit of freshness, and a little bit of lemon juice. Just mix it and let it rest. In Denmark, the meatballs is made from pork and veal. Again, 60-40% pork. And I think that comes from pork just being a lot cheaper in Denmark than veal would be. So I bought it separately and we're gonna mix it together. So now that you have the meat here together, it's very important to make the meat get a little like bound together. So I'm gonna add salt. And don't be afraid of the salt here because we're gonna add both milk, flour, onions, and eggs. I also like to get the pepper in right away so it has some time to give some flavor. And I really like just squish it really, really well together here. So now it has the texture that I really want to, where it kind of like sticks together but also falls a little bit into lumps. And you can see how the color is more one than it was before. So the fourth that I removed from here, I'm gonna actually just fill up with flour, and I'm just using plain all-purpose flour. And then I'm gonna add 3 eggs. I like to have quite a lot of eggs in my meatballs because it makes them a little bit lighter. And again, like with the stew, you can always add more flour if it's too thin. And I pour a little bit of milk. Ooh, everywhere that went. And again, I just like using my hands for this. So the meatballs here, or the frikadeller, has been standing here resting for a little time. So I'm gonna cut a little bit of onion to put in there. Just like that. And a lot of people blanch them or grind them or do whatever. I'm just gonna add them straight up in here. And a little bit of parsley. And I really like to use all of the parsley. The stem hasn't done anything to you, so I think you should just use it. It still has a lot of flavor. It might be a little bit more chewy, but when you cut it up finely like this, and you put it in something, it just really adds to a lot. And one of my pet peeves are food wastes. So why not just eat it instead of throwing it away? Again, hands back in, stir it. And then I would let this rest again for like in the fridge for roughly half an hour. To shape the frikadeller, I have a little bowl with just regular cold water, my favorite spoon, the frikadeller farce, or the frikadeller, batter, for lack of words. And then I have here a little bit of oil and butter, and the butter has just browned off. So you make a little scoop like this, add a little bit more water, and then you simply just mold it in your hand, like this. So to flip the frikadeller, I like to use a fork, and it's simply just going underneath. I flip them over, give them a light press. And you see, nice and golden brown. And I like to cook them just for color on the pan and then finish them in the oven. Stewed cabbage and a couple of warm meatballs. I cooked the meatballs for 7 minutes in the oven before serving them.